Hello there folks, it is TIJ Gaming and welcome to a new video. Today it is time for the first of the Football Manager 21 team guides. A video, hopefully a 10-15 minute video, where I'll show you guys around a team, look at the club vision, the history of the team, what you might be expected to do in the coming seasons, new players, any new injuries you might have to consider, the dynamics of the team, my recommended tactics, transfer suggestions and also some youngsters to watch. And we're going to start with the league winners from last year, Liverpool, and the club that I support in real life. And these videos are really intended for those of you who maybe this is your first Football Manager game, or you're not too sure where to start with Liverpool. For those of you who are experienced with Football Manager, know a lot about Liverpool and other teams, this isn't really the video for you. But where you can help is if you've got any more suggestions that I haven't said in the video, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'm also doing a beta save with Wolverhampton Wanderers on the channel on the daily basis at 4 PM, so if you'd like to check that out, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And a link to that video will be in the end screen after this. So let's get into it. Of course, Liverpool, the title winners last year, an absolutely monumental season for Liverpool last year. And you've been tasked, if you take over Liverpool at this point, to continue it, because if we look at the club vision first off, the ongoing plan, the end of the current season, is to win the Premier League. Now, as I understand it, and what's usually happened in Football Manager in the past, is that if you take over a big club, one of the big four really, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United or Chelsea, you are going to be expected to win the Premier League on the first season. That's a tough one. It all depends really how you start, I suppose, but you've got to have a consistent season. A few other bits and pieces, the club would like you to reach the final of the FA Cup, but that isn't a requirement. That is just a preferred objective. So if you really want to go hammer and tongs for the Premier League and the Champions League, and you're not bothered about the domestic cups, then the club aren't going to be too bothered. That if you get to the final of the FA Cup and only come 10th in the Premier League, well, that isn't going to be good enough for anyone. The Community Shield, which Liverpool are taking part in, it's going to be Liverpool against Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal the winners of the FA Cup last year, and Liverpool the winners of the league. That's going to be the Community Shield. Only one game, really a glorified friendly. It'd be nice to get a first trophy, wouldn't it, on your first game in FM? But again, that's not important. That's really just to look at your squad. Same goes for the EFL Cup, the Carabao Cup. And the club also expect, which I think is mightily tough, depending on the draw that you get in the knockout rounds, to reach the semi-final of the Champions League. That is a very, very, very tough objective. Looking forward, though, the club just want you to win the Premier League and continue to win the Premier League. And interestingly, this objective, which I haven't seen before, and the board attempts to make the club self-sustainable in terms of finances. So don't spend too much, basically. The club culture is to play attacking football. No real surprises here. A lot of these elements are taken by Jurgen Klopp's coaching at the moment, and that's something you're going to be expected to continue. Sign players under the age of 23 for the first team, as Liverpool have done this year with Diego Jotter. We'll look at transfers in just a minute. And develop players using the club's youth system. And it has to be said that Liverpool have one of the best youth systems in the country. 5-year plan then, ongoing, that's expanding the stadium. The boards have plans to expand the stadium. You haven't got to go to the board as such. The board will come to you when they have an idea about expanding the stadium. When it's the right time, when it's the right place, they will come to you about expanding the stadium. Increase commercial revenue, so that's really signing big players and merchandising booths, selling shirts, etc, etc. And two key things. One key thing first is to work within the wage budget, which you will see here. The club is currently spending £2,914,000 on wages, so you've got £100,000 a week to play with. Don't let this figure here go above this, because then you are going to be going out your wage budget, and that's going to cost the club quite a bit of money in terms of cash flow. And also to maintain the club status as the most reputable team in England, and hopefully if you achieve some of these aims, that will come naturally. So, let's have a quick look at some new players that have come into Liverpool. Liverpool really have made two big signings this year. We'll go through them all though. They have signed Matthias Mussolowski, a player that, admittedly, as a Liverpool fan, I've never heard of, but he seems quite a good player for the future. Certainly not now, but joined from Polish team SMS Lodz, and he looks a decent player, but again, one that's going to sit in the under-18s and develop over the years. Liverpool have also signed a backup left-back to replace Alberto Moreno, who went out last year, Kostas Tomiskas. Is it Tomiskas? Isn't it embarrassing? I'm a fan of Liverpool, and I don't even know how to pronounce my own players' names. But an £11 million signing from Olympiacos. He's a solid backup player, and that's reflected with him being a fringe player. If you hover over the place that they are in the squad, it'll say what they expect. They expect to be given the occasional opportunity to come into the first team and impress. And if you also go on to, where is it now? It might not be in here. There we go, perfect. If you go on to overview and happiness, you can also see it on this screen. You'll see what their actual playing time is, what it considers, and what their agreed playing time is. So keep a close look on that just to see how you're getting on. Liverpool have also signed Marcelo Pitaluga. Again, I've never heard of him. I've never heard of him in my life. So that's one that they kept on the quiet. But again, another 17-year-old for the future. Two big signings that have been made, and unless you're living under a rock, you must know about these. And this is a really interesting one. The 23-year-old Diogo Jotter from Wolverhampton Wanderers, originally a Portuguese prospect at Pacos de Ferreira, then went to Atletico Madrid. But Wolves signed him for a pretty penny at 12.75 million, and it's fair to say that Wolves have made a pretty profit on him. But a versatile player, you have to say. Although his best position is on the left of the attacking midfield, he can play all across that attacking midfield, and he can also play up front naturally. Attacking midfield on the left, a left wing and a striker is his best positions. But as a striker, he'd like to be on the right of a two-man pairing. So realistically, in terms of the players we've got at the moment, you'd have to play a 4-2-2 and put him alongside Roberto Firmino. That tells me that he doesn't want to be up there by himself. But his natural position is as a left winger. He's going to be a big player for you if he's anything like in real life. And a cracking signing as well to bolster the midfield is Thiago, the 29-year-old from Bayern Munich. Not anything that's going to be revolutionary because he is 29 years of age. It doesn't necessarily fit with that less than 23 years old game, but 29 years old, an experienced player from across Europe. He's played for Barcelona and Bayern Munich, so he's certainly got plenty of pedigree at some of the best clubs in the world. And if you look at the coach reports, he sits there pretty favourably with the likes of Henderson, Wijnaldum, Fabinho and James Milner as your defensive and general central midfield choice. A few outs then. Dayan Lovren's left the club. Kejon Huover has left the club. That was in the Diogo Jotter deal. But really, there's nothing significant that's happened here. Nothing that's going to really change too much. So if we look at the hierarchy then of Liverpool, the dynamic screen, not surprising that our two model citizens, Henderson and Milner, are our team leaders. Henderson is the captain, and at the moment Milner is the vice-captain. Milner, he's cracking on a bit though. He's 34 years of age, and realistically, you're probably going to get until the end of this contract at the most, 2022, and the club might start to grumble at some point, particularly if he's not in favour and he's not playing in the first team. You know, you're paying him £145,000 a week. That's a lot. That's 5% of the wage bill for someone who might just be warming the bench. But just bear that in mind. He is going to be a key player as a team leader. Henderson as well. And Mohamed Salah is your third team leader. So we've got a nice breadth of leaders, influential players across the squad. And it looks pretty good to me. Liverpool is a squad that is blessed with having quite a bit of depth. Probably apart from the goalkeeper. But we'll talk about that in a little while. We've got highly influential players. No surprise that all of these players have been at the club for quite a while now. Even Virgil Van Dijk. This is his fourth season at Liverpool. I can't believe how quickly that has gone. And luckily, Virgil van Dijk has not got an injury. That's what I was fearing starting this. But Virgil van Dijk is not injured at the start of FM21. Certainly on the update that I'm on here. But yeah, influential players. Shaqiri Minamino. He's a player that came in January. It's going to be his first full season. He only made 10 appearances. Most of those from the bench last year. And he's definitely a backup player. And his natural position is on the right of the attacking midfield. So potentially, if you're looking at in the cups, potentially you don't want to play any younger players, but you're looking for players that are younger in the main squad. Then potentially Minamino and Jotter on the wings rather than Salah and Mane might well be a good choice. And other players, we've got Adrian and the two new signings. No surprise there, but Thiago has already put himself in the influential players list, probably because of his age. Social groups then, the core social groups. The core social group really is a list of players who have been at the club a long time, with Minamino accepted. And social group A, I'd say, probably are a lot of players from the country. We've got Henderson, Milner, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Gomez, all from the UK. And then Adrian, Van Dijk and Wijnaldum in that group as well. And Thiago, Jotter and Timiskas. I need to get his name right. Tissimikas. I'll get there eventually. But I wouldn't worry about these three players, to be honest. At least Thiago and Jotter have got each other. Poor Kostas, eh? Oh, coming from Greece. No other Greek player. We'll have to bring Kyriakos back from 2010. But, yeah, this looks like a pretty good squad. There's not really much you can do with Liverpool, apart from a massive expectation to succeed. And it's no surprise that we've gone for this formation that's going to be my formation that I'm going to suggest here. A 4-3-3, but on the face of it, pretty much a 4-5-1. Your normal back line with Alisson in the net, I'm going to take him back to defensive. We don't want him as an attacking sweeper keeper, because as you can see, if he goes on attacking, he will take more risks and dribble more. It's all about what you want, I suppose, but the animation at the bottom will show the position and what the player does in that position. So if you're new to Football Manager, not quite sure what's going on, that might well help you there. We've got the two wing backs again, really doing what they do in real life, running wide with the ball, getting further forward as you can see here, putting the crosses in and hopefully contributing to a few goals like that. I bet like Alexander-Arnold will get you a few assists. The normal two at the back, Van Dijk and Matip. You've got Joe Gomez as a third choice on the bench. I guess that is one thing that Liverpool haven't particularly got now in their main squad now that Lovren's got. They've only got 3 centre-backs in the first team. That's why they've had to call on the likes of Reece Williams and Nathan Phillips at the start of the season. But do remember that Fabinho can play there as well. Fabinho in at defensive midfield. And I've put him in as an anchor man. Now, a deep line playmaker is his best position. But rule of thumb on Football Manager is to only have one playmaker. And that's the position that Naby Keita has taken up. Henderson alongside him in the midfield. And to start the season, you've really got to go with the pressing forward of Roberto Firmino. It's I suppose, similar to a false 9 role. But that pressing forward is just to put pressure on the opposition and really try and contribute to these guys, Salah and Mane. And you'll notice that these guys will take more risks, get further forward, and effectively it makes it into a 4-3-3. In terms of instructions then, we've gone with a fairly narrow attacking width, but you can change that. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, massively. Play out of defence, not too aggressive with the passing directness. A standard passing directness. With the gegenpress, you've got to go with a high tempo, unless it just simply doesn't work. But as I said, instructions, the less the better, I think, at early stage. You don't want to confuse the lads. Just go with what the tactics says. Counter-attacking, again, high defensive line. You might look to push that back a little bit for bigger games, maybe for games where you are favoured. For example, the first game of the season, maybe not against Southampton, but against Fulham. If you really want to push forward, go for that higher defensive line. Not much higher, that's just a disaster, but a higher defensive line. Obviously, swap that around between matches. And then on the bench, we've got Adrian, our backup goalkeeper. Gomez is injured at the start of the game for a few weeks. Bear in mind, we are in August, so I suppose that all depends on where you start the game. But he's not going to be out for long. He's actually done an injury in-game rather than set in the editor, if you like. So it's been done in a friendly, so that might not be the case in-game. And I think this is probably the same for all of these players. But Shaqiri is out for 2 months. He will be back fairly soon, but he will miss the start of the season. And Oxlade-Chamberlain seems to be the same. You've got your ever-reliant James Milner on the bench. He can play pretty much anywhere. Right back, left back, defensive midfield, in the midfield. He'd even play up front if you wanted it to, but I'm not going to suggest you do that. Wijnaldum, Thiago on the bench, Diego Jotter. I suppose if you are going to play Jotter, then he either comes in and replaces Firmino and maybe play him as an advanced forward, or if you really want to press home the advantage, get rid of the defensive midfielder and bring them both in. He likes to play on the right of an attacking pair, so put him there. And keep Firmino as the pressing forward. But just bear in mind that you might need somebody like Keita to drop back and defend, because obviously you haven't got that defensive midfield. Okay, fair enough, you've got Van Dijk and Matip who are very strong in those positions, but you still need somebody to cover that defensive line. You don't want people to be counter-attacking on you and slipping in too many goals, because the will score more goals than you mentality in FM is a tough one. It's will give you a lot of stress, so just try and keep it nice and comfortable at the back. Apart from that, though, you've got a few backup players. Karius and Grujic both out on loan. We've talked about Tsimikas and Minamino. Origi's the only other one. He's at Liverpool. You might choose to send him out on loan. He's really going to be third choice in terms of a striker, isn't he? Behind Firmino and Jotter. You might choose to put Origi in, perhaps, rather than Jotter. But it's that new signing frill, isn't it? Jotter's done very well in real life. And I suppose if we want to keep updated and realistic with real life, you can see these players, they're very well matched, aren't they? Origi is better in the air. Jotter is slightly better from a speed point of view, but very well matched. But bear in mind, Origi is 2 years older, so Jotter might turn out to be the better player. And of course, you influence that by how much you play them, the form that they're in, so the game influences some of that for you. I'm going to make this a fairly boring one in terms of transfer suggestions. I'm not going to suggest anyone for the moment, because if you look at the strength in depth at Liverpool, there is quite a number of it, really. You can see that in all of these positions, you've got quite a bit of depth, and it's going to take quite an injury crisis for you to really struggle. Okay, centre-back might be a problem, but Henderson can get in there for you. Goalkeeper strength, you've got Adrian on the bench. Again, he's a second keeper. And yeah, there's a fair bit of depth here at Liverpool, so I can't really suggest anyone to sign. Liverpool really have the perfect squad now, courtesy of Michael Edwards, the director of football, and the manager, Jurgen Klopp. And what I was talking about earlier was the strength of their youth system. And talking quickly about another goalkeeper you could take advantage of is Kamil Grabara. He's on loan in Denmark at AGF at the moment, but he's a solid player. He's 2 stars, so a similar sort of rating to Adrian, and obviously Adrian hasn't got age on his side particularly. You can see that Adrian has got a lot more eccentricity. I've never been able to say that very well, but that's an attribute that you don't particularly want in a player, so that's not a worry really that Grabara hasn't got that too much. But he's a player that will develop. He's 21 years old, and you can't recall him from loan this year, probably for the first 6 months, but I think that he would be a cracking player to bring in the future. So, if you look at youngsters, the under-23 squad is absolutely filled with talent. Harvey Elliot, the 17-year-old who joined from Fulham last year, he is a right winger on loan at Blackburn, so just check how he gets on throughout the season. He's been doing very well there in real life, but he's a definite replacement potentially for Mohamed Salah. We've seen Curtis Jones in the first team this year in a few games in the Champions League and in the Premier League, a player that I've not been too impressed with. But he is definitely a breakthrough prospect, and you can see he's currently 2 stars, which is a decent rating for the first team, but he has potential to be a good player, if not a star for the first team. And just for a bit of context, his best position is at left wing, but really he's a central midfielder, I feel. And at central midfield, if he was to come on and reach his potential of 4 stars, he'd be the best player at the club ahead of Henderson, so just think about that. And also you've got Alexander-Arnold, who's a very versatile player. He might well turn into a central midfielder if you want to retrain him, because he's a player that I think for England will probably end up there in the future. A lot of youngsters though here. We haven't got time to go through them all, but just a few quick picks again. Seth Vandenberg, another new signing from PSV Sval, who signed a few years ago. He's a very solid player, 18 years of age, plenty of time to develop. He could become a good player, but only a good player, not a superb player. He's not going to be the best player in the world, but he certainly will be a good player. We've got players like Leighton Clarkson, Neco Williams, Elijah Dixon-Bonner, Ben Woodburn, who was the best thing since sliced bread a few years ago, but he doesn't really seem to have reached his potential at the age of 20, only now still playing in 3rd Division football. And my advice would be that maybe in 1 or 2 years' time, if he hasn't got into the first team, it might be time to cut ties with Woodburn and cash in. The same really for any of these youngsters, is that if they don't quite fill their potential, maybe cash in. If we look at some of the older members of the under-23 team, Harry Wilson on loan at Cardiff, he's not really going to break into the first team. A value of 15.5 million, I'd get him gone next year. I feel like you could probably sell him for 25 million, and that's a good injection of cash into the team, and that might well allow you to reinvest in some other youngsters who might be able to do better in the future. Again, Shea Ojo, not a player who's going to light up the world, I don't think, still playing in 2nd Division football. I'd say Harry Wilson and Shea Ojo, cash in and get rid. But you can spend hours looking through these screens, and I don't have to tell you too much about these players. A quick look at the under-18s before we finish. A big player, and the biggest player out of all of these, it seems, is James Palagisi. Christ, he's English. I can't pronounce his name. Interestingly, a former Manchester City player, a former Manchester City youngster, only 16 years of age. He's way off first team level at the moment, but again, he could become a good player. You've got to watch these youngsters, and the best place to look at these youngsters as an overview is the development centre. Your head of youth development, who at the moment is Alex Inglethorpe, as in real life, will give you a quick summary. You can see first team candidates. Curtis Jones, the only one at the moment. Alex says that he could become a star player as good as Mo Salah. I mean, we'll take that. And there's 5 players to watch here, and those will change throughout. And if there's any attention that needs going for players, maybe players who are injured, players who aren't developing as well as possible, you will see all that in here. But I think that's pretty much it for the team guide for Liverpool. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them down below if you're a completely new player to Football Manager. But hopefully I've given a good summary of the club vision, the history of Liverpool, new players, injuries, dynamics, tactics, and of course youngsters to watch in the team. And as I said at the start of the video, if you've got any suggestions for transfers, any general suggestions, tactical, anything, we're all in this together. Help your fellow FM players out in the comments. But thank you for your company today. I'll be doing plenty more of these. I'll be doing a Manchester United one, which will be coming out at 1 PM today, followed by a Chelsea team guide at 7 PM today. And we'll also have part 2 of the Wolves beta save out at 4 PM. And if you stick around for another 30 odd seconds, you'll see links to 2 videos, hopefully 2 Football Manager videos in the end screen that you can go on and watch. But as I said, if you enjoyed that, leave a like. It will get to more people if you engage with the video. Comment down below, of course, as well, and subscribe for daily Football Manager content. Thank you for watching this one. I have been TIJ Gaming, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye for now.